Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to OrbitCon. This is our second day, our first panel. This panel is called Support the Ones Doing the Work. This is a panel brought to us by Black Nonbelievers. You can find the blog post for this session on the orbit.net. Just click on the OrbitCon banner at the top. It'll take you there. Find it on the schedule, click through. If you have questions, you can leave them there and we will get them to Mandisa and Bria. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mandisa. Good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you to my sister Bree for joining us for this discussion this morning. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we represent Black Nonbelievers within the atheist and secular movement. I'm the founder and president of the organization, and Bree represents our board as well as the Detroit affiliate. We've been going strong now for 7 years, not about 7 years, but for 7 years. And in that time, we have seen quite a few changes. We've experienced quite a few things in this movement. And we're here to discuss how, even with a lot of the dissent that we see online and within this movement, there's still a lot of good things taking place. And we're here to offer some really good pointers and advice and suggestions on how you can be more active, how you can be more supportive of not just groups like Black Nonbelievers, although we would like for you to, as much as possible, to just support other efforts and the ones that you find that best suit your needs. So before I turn it over to Bree, I'm going to give some background on myself as well. You know, I was born and raised in New York, wasn't formally raised religious, but I've always had an activist spirit. Learned early on about how Christianity was imposed in the Black community. And but I was always surrounded by religious people. I think, you know, in any Black neighborhood, you're never going to escape it, no matter where you are. And I think that's something that is important for people to understand, is that even if that isn't your background, even if you were formerly raised religious or weren't, in white communities, you might be able to better escape it. But in Black communities, even if you're raised atheist, more than likely you're not. And so it needs to be understood that there are different dynamics to each community and how we have to handle the challenges that we face, particularly being atheists, but also the issues that pertain to our specific community. And there are a lot of people who want to get involved. There are a lot of folks who are, you know, they can be considered passionate, but it takes a concerted effort to make sure that we're doing it and doing it right, and that we're focusing on the things that are productive, which means calling for change within the community, but also changes within ourselves. And so we'll spend this next hour or so. I know it's about 3 minutes in, but I'm going to turn it over to Bree for a few minutes so that she can give her background and an introduction. Take it away.
Thanks, Mandisa. For those who don't know, my name is Bridgett, but everyone calls me Bria. And my background, I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles, 59th place in Budlong, straight hood, but I was a Jehovah's Witness in the hood. And not only was I a Jehovah's Witness, yes, I knocked on doors, I was teased, and I was baptized. I was baptized at the age of 17. With among 5,000 people at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, home of the Dodgers. And as soon as I came up out of the water, I knew that I would no longer be a Jehovah's Witness. I knew at 18 I would leave the organization as it's known. Even though I left, I was spiritual, had no idea about atheism. So it was just naturally assumed that I had to believe. So I went on a spiritual journey. I studied Buddhism. I had a lot of anger. So Nation of Islam seemed to be a perfect fit for me until I discovered how submissive women were expected to be. And for those that know me, they know that there is not a submissive bone unless there's a plate of food in front of me. So that wasn't going to work. And plus, I just had to keep up anger. It just took to now some incidences and situations, anger came naturally, but I just had to be constantly angry. And I was young, I was a young mother, and being angry didn't work all the time for me. So that, in conjunction with me being submissive, I stopped studying with Nation of Islam, and I just lived life believing in God until I started at AT&T, and I was ministered to on the job. And emotionally, the words that were told to me, I needed to hear. I needed to hear it at that time. I was extremely vulnerable. I had ended a horrible relationship, and I figured that believing in this Jesus and getting saved, that relationship sounded a hell of a lot better than the relationship I came out of. And as I do with everything, I jumped in head first. I don't half-ass do anything. And I went up the ranks pretty quickly. I caught the eye of my pastor. I began to evangelize. I was a minister. I was a prayer warrior. And I was ordained as a prophetess. So I took my role in the church, Pentecostal, very seriously, until there was a time when a woman who I greatly admired, she had went in for her annual checkup, was asked if she do her breast exams, and admittedly, like many Black women, she said no. And so the doctor proceeded to examine her, and she was immediately admitted into the hospital onto the oncology floor. She was stage 4. And that night, and I know it was a Monday, and I remember because we went to church on Monday nights after work, and there was just this hell of a prayer circle. So I knew something serious was going on. And I said, what happened? What's going on? And I don't want to mention her name. They said that was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I'm like, oh my God. So of course I joined the prayer circle. And when the prayer concluded, the pastor said that she was healed. Now, like I said, I was a very staunch believer I believed the Bible. I believed it wholeheartedly. So when my former pastor said that she was healed, I believed she was healed. I was a fervent Christian. However, a year later, she was dead. So even now, when I think about that, I feel betrayed. I felt like the pastor could have said, I don't know how this is going to end, but God got it. I could have accepted that. But he was so resolute in saying that she was healed that I believed it. And so I was distraught. And I went to the pastor and I said, but you said that God said that she was healed. And then he said she had her final healing. And even now, when I think about it, I am still insulted by that statement that the church really has issues with saying, I don't know, I don't have an answer. So I had already doubted, but that spearheaded me into searching. And I ended up subsequently leaving church, but I still believe in God. And I just went on this spiritual journey, and I just read the Bible. I read the Bible this time objectively, like I would read any other book. And what I read was disconcerting. I was horrified. I was embarrassed because, like I've told people, I was just defending a serial killer. And the church plays up how Satan is the worst. No, actually, the God of the Bible Satan pales in comparison to the God of the Bible. For those who come from a religious background and are now secular, have an idea of what I'm saying, because many of us became atheists after reading the Bible. But even though I knew I could never go back to the church, I would never be a Christian again, I started Googling and learned about agnosticism and atheism. And I felt saying I was agnostic was safe because at least I kind of believed. But when I wore that label, it was a lie, whether I liked it or not, because I'm just not someone who can live a double life. That's just not in me. I'm either all or nothing. And I confessed in my bedroom that I was an atheist. And I was so scared because I said, with my luck, this will be the one time God will prove who he is and send a thunderbolt through this ceiling of mine. But nothing happened. And then I kept saying, I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. And still nothing happened. And I took the next step and changed religious views. I think I went from like Christian to spiritual to none of your business. And then I changed it to atheist, and holy cannoli, it was all hell broke loose. But I'm glad it happened that way because I got to get rid of the trash. The trash took itself out. I had been blocked, deleted, and I was hurt, but I was okay with that because conditional friendships. So I went on this quest to find out now what. I followed a bunch of atheists on Twitter, and I noticed that they were all white. And I asked, I think it was Angie Jackson, who had went viral when she was documenting. I think she documented her abortion or the process of her abortion. And I just thought she was just this wonderful. And it's just so funny because I'm like Angie Jackson, but she's white. I just thought that was so. I had never met an Angie Jackson. And I remember she had went viral on the internet, and they did a story on it. She was documenting her abortion. I just like, man, she was so badass. And I ended up, if I'm not mistaken, I asked her where the Black atheists were. And she pointed me to Facebook because I didn't really use Facebook. I was just a huge Twitterer. And that's what happened. And it was like I was home. I ended up I joined a couple of Black atheist Facebook groups, left, created my own. That was short-lived. And Mandisa and I met maybe was it about 2 years? Mandy, it was a Mother's Day post.
Yes. So I'll take it from here. Yeah. So Black Non-Believers of Atlanta was founded in 2011, and that's when I discovered that the Black Freethinkers Network was up. So I think we had started like joining each other's stuff, subscribe to your website, and y'all were a part of our Facebook group. And I saw that y'all were doing blog talk stuff, and then we were actually hosting in-person events. And that's something that's important to note, is because even though there are different entities, we all do different things.
Yeah.
But we started working together. And so for Mother's Day, because one of the things that I do, I love to challenge traditional norms. I challenge things that are considered taboo. And Mother's Day was something that was really, really sensitive for me because I don't have a good relationship with my mother, for those of you who don't know. And it was eating me because I felt like I needed to write something about it in this new journey of re-identifying as an atheist and actually facilitating a group to help other atheists. It really started to eat at me to the point where I felt like I needed to say something about Mother's Day. And so I remember I was up from about midnight to about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, writing and rewriting this note on Facebook.
That Facebook note.
And so once I was satisfied with it, I hit send and I published it. And next thing you know, just got all of these good responses.
I read that note and I was like, okay, this lady is living my life, because my mother and our relationship was trash. It was bad enough I was rebellious. It was bad enough I'm lesbian. Now I'm an atheist. And so to see, like, how we always say in the atheist community, you are not alone. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. But as far as the mother-daughter dynamic, I wasn't alone. Oh my God. That Facebook note, that Mother's Day note was pivotal for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I need to find out who this lady is. I need to find out. And then you came on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting it's amazing how sometimes the things we write, the thoughts we have, the moment we express them, you never know what will come from that.
Yeah.
And that should be a note for the people watching and listening, is that the moment we speak up about certain things, even if we don't think that, even if you think you might get backlash, I wasn't sure what was going to come from it. I just knew that it needed to be said. I needed to get it out. And I didn't realize what kind of impact that would have.
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of people felt the same way I did. And I really wanted to speak not just for myself, but the people who also felt marginalized by such a very popular holiday that can be very, very not just uncomfortable, but painful for others.
Yeah. I think after that, I didn't, when you came on the show, and people just don't believe that, but I really am introverted. I mean, when I'm forced to speak, when I'm forced to put that game face on, I definitely have honed my skill, but I knew that I wanted to connect with you. I just didn't know how to go about it. But down the road, I ended up disconnecting due to a mutual. Due to a mutual, I ended up basically just cutting all ties. And then we reconnected a couple of years later. And you can't predict how friendships, sisterhood, comrades, and camaraderie will play itself out. So even though I didn't like the events that transpired, I'm glad that it happened the way it did, because it was so organic. And I wanted to just support Black non-believers, because at that time I had Minority Atheists of Michigan, which was hilarious because it was predominantly white. And I'm just like,
they supported your work, which was good. Yeah, they supported the work.
Yes. And, even though, I was new into as a secular leader, and I didn't want to make any waves. And so, I would get these emails from white people, and they would go, "Can I join?" And I go, "Well, yeah, because you are a minority, because you are an atheist." But it didn't feel like that was what I was supposed to do. And we had one of the conferences you and I attended. I don't know if it was Austin. Maybe it was maybe it was Salt Lake. But we attended one, and I knew right then at the conclusion of this conference, I made a decision, like, I have to dissolve Minority Atheists of Michigan, because this isn't the path that I want to be on. I feel like being Black and atheist was more of a priority to me, because the mainstream atheists, they're set, they are a priority. I think us experiencing being overlooked, literally being overlooked, people not speaking to us, acknowledging our existence, motivated me to say, okay, we need this in Detroit. And I remember I was so scared. I was so scared to broach this, because you and I have dealt with people that ride coattails, people that people that don't want to build. They don't want to build at all. And even though our friendship was solidified, I was so scared to broach having an affiliate in Detroit, because I did not want you to think I wanted to ride your coattails. And I know you know me, but still, because of our past experience, that thought did come. What if she thinks? And I just said, screw it. I was so, like, my adrenaline was running, and I said, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this in Detroit. I was so scared, though, because, Mandy, you know how the churches have proliferated on every corner. And some of the Christians can be pretty aggressive. I learned that when we would table at the Motor City Gay Pride. Like they want to like knuckle up, buckle up with you. However, I said, you know what? Push come to shove. If I gotta do that to defend, I will.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but there has been no animosity that was exhibited, and the best part of establishing the Detroit group was that the people that support me have been invaluable, and I think, and that's the whole point of this topic. I knew it inevitably will work our way to the how important it is to have people to support you. And I think for whatever reason, people are very comfortable sitting and watching you work. They don't have any problem giving you suggestions, critiquing you, but those people are not going to get off their behinds to help. So I know I am very fortunate in that aspect with the Detroit affiliate that I like. You know, I've been tired, I've been burned out, and I said I'm going to have my. And the weather has been, you know, the weather has done whatever it wanted to in Michigan and across the nation. But I said, I told my wife, I'm going to get it. I'm going to set up our meetup. And then Marquita, bam, Marquita was like, Heifer, we ain't waiting on you. I'm going to do it. You know, it's time. Yeah. We are going to have our meetup, whether you're there or not. So that's why it's so important to surround yourself with genuine people who are about community and not out for self, because when they can pick up where you leave off, it is imperative. Yeah. That's imperative.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. Yeah. And so I think if people haven't gotten a sense of how we are now and how the sisterhood works, now you do. And so what I'm going to do from here is go into the work that Black Nonbelievers does and has done. For one, our primary focus and our purpose is to build that support and community primarily offline. Let me say that again. It is our mission is to provide and build that community and support offline. There are a number of online entities, and we are one of them. And they do their work, which is good. However, I've always been, even before Black Nonbelievers was started, I was always an advocate for taking online relationships or online connections offline. Start meeting people in person, start engaging folks. And that could be in how I've developed as like a customer service professional, because I've had my life having to overcome the trauma from my childhood, because I did have it, even though I wasn't raised religious. I had to come out of a shell as well. I had to understand that not everyone was against me, that I would be able to handle people who, you know, were shitty, because like Bree is from the hood. I'm from the hood too in New York. I'm from the project. So there's value in having grown up in certain environments that make you more aware.
Yeah.
And so to get back to the work we do and in engaging people offline, it's imperative. It's been good, because meeting people face to face, you really get a good sense of how people are in person, because we see a difference between people's online personas and people's offline actions. You say that again. Online personas versus offline actions, because people can talk a good game online. They can say what they want, but and that is work. But when we're talking about building in person, organizing and creating events, that's a whole different set of skills that people take for granted.
Yeah.
And so some of the other work that we have done is, when we have people who contact us, we've been contacted for since this started to take on a whole new life when we were first contacted by a grad student who wanted to film us talking about our experiences for her grad school project. And so what that did for us and for the community was allow people to see our faces and hear our stories a whole lot more. Because it was one thing for us to talk in person, to build that community, for people to kind of see us, you know, with like minds, but to cross over and branch out and for people to get a better understanding, not just within the atheist community, but also for believers who didn't know what atheism was, that there are Black atheists out here, and that we were actually telling our stories. That was transitional and pivotal for us, because, and there were some folks who were scared to death. When I tell you they were scared the first time I put it out there, to say, hey, this person wants to sit down, interview with us, and for us to tell our stories on camera. There were people who were like, no, I can't. But then there were some who stepped up, and even though they worked in Christian environments, they were like, what the hell? I might as well do it. And so from there, we've been able to, and also too, in that time, Candace Gorham was working on her book, The Ebony Exodus Project, which both Bree and I were interviewed for, and we're featured in that book.
That was cathartic.
And so, yes, it was. Yeah. And, you know, what that also allowed us to do was to have our members participate in projects now that involve research, that involves something that is in print and that is evidence-based for people to understand our experiences. And what I've noticed in that time was, from the first time we put out there for people to, from the first project we asked people to participate in to speak on film, we eventually, in the summer of 2013, we participated in a documentary series for Atlanta Innovative Broadcasting. And the number of people who initially said that they were scared a couple of years ago, they were like, "Oh, I'm all for it. I'm down." Because what that allowed for our members to do was gain that courage. Mm-hmm. They gained the courage to start speaking more and you know, to express themselves a whole lot better than they did before. And also in establishing the other being affiliates or the being chapters. And I think it's good to replicate the brand. Branding is important. And I say replicate. It isn't duplicating, it's replicating, to let people know that, hey, we are a brand, we are an organization, we're building. And so, and for people who are able to step up and lead it and facilitate, because Bree will tell you, I will guide you, I will not micromanage, I will not control you. I don't expect people to put in as much effort as I do, but if you are serious about getting involved, there is an expectation that we have.
Yeah.
And even if it isn't us standing out with the bullhorns, yelling and screaming at people all day long, support is our foundation, because it gives people the courage to do that if they want. And hopefully they'll be able to do that as openly identified atheists, and showing that that we're Black too. So in that, we do create leadership. There are leadership opportunities in that, because I don't want to be the only voice out here. And in our work, we have featured people who have, you know, like I said, for example, Candace, who has produced literature that she's been able to, you know, gather through Black nonbelievers. We've also produced other activists, people who now hold jobs in this movement. They've been able to build their profile as a result of being involved with Black nonbelievers. We've put on a few major events of our own, the Blackout Secular Rally in 2013 in New York. We did the Reason Rally After Party in 2012. You know, we just completed that. We did our 5th anniversary celebration, which was a celebration of those authors. I was just telling this story yesterday, or this experience yesterday, of one of our members who was in the closet. His name is Ron Murphy. He was in the closet, didn't know how he was going to have this conversation with his family and such. Next thing you know, a couple of years later, he comes out with a book called The Everyday Atheist. I was like, wait a minute. Like, when did this happen? Like, wait, what? So in that, we've had content producers. We have people who are getting involved more. We have people who are telling their stories. And guess what? That is work. Yeah. It takes work to put those things together in order for people to have the opportunity to do that. And so, and even in a lot of marches and demonstrations and all of those other activities, the organizers of these events, it takes mundane and often stressful and tedious work and details that people often don't understand are important. But building that support system also involves those tedious, mundane, and often consistent details that people don't understand are important. And so that is a part of the work that we have done and a part of the work that we continue to do, because I am confident that it is through the existence of Black non-believers that there are now more openly identified Black atheists out there, and that are on the ground, that they have boots on the ground, and that they are making themselves visible at different events like other conferences and conventions. And there are also other events now that have been able to have been created as a result of, even if they aren't necessarily affiliated with us, it is because of their engagement with us that they've been able to do this.
Let me jump in because you did name Ron Murphy, Candace Gorham, the anthology by Daryl Smith. What I also want to impart to how important it is to get involved is that a legacy has been established. See, while I'm being helped, Mandy's being helped, Black non-believers, Black atheists are being helped, I'm thinking about the posterity down the road. I'm thinking about the Black atheists who aren't even born yet, those who are coming when we're gone. When they Google, Frugal, Schmoogle, whatever the hottest search engine will be when we're dead, we're history makers. Whether we realize it or not, the actions that we do, how we help the community, it is solidified. So when these future people come to play and realize that they're atheists and they're Black, and hopefully by the time we're gone, we won't have to say I'm a Black atheist. We're just here. Like Hugh Laurie said, it's no big deal. It's like having a conference for right-handed people. Hopefully by the time I'm no longer here, it will be so common that we won't even have to identify as atheists. But until that time, every keystroke, every picture, every word that is typed is building our future. So, and I understand how scary it is. It is very scary. I came out as an atheist to my mother driving 70 miles on the freeway at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I knew she couldn't jump out the car. Okay, right. I'm a grandmother, and I was still afraid to tell my mom that I was an atheist. So that fear is very real. However, I'm thinking about those who aren't here. So that's right. It's not what we do for us, cool, fine, and dandy. What we doing for the young kids who are 16, 17, and they're vocal, telling their mothers and fathers, I'm an atheist, mom, and like, as long as you under my roof, we're still dealing with that. But I'm also thinking about my grandchildren. I've often wondered, they're 7 and I have toddlers, which I wonder if any of them will be atheists. I'm thinking about those who aren't here. So everything we do is contributing to our future. And I see we have a question.
Yeah, and also too, before I get into the question, the one thing that I've also encountered older generations. We are multi-generational as an organization. We have connected with older Black folks who were either raised religious, they even raised their kids religious.
Yeah.
But eventually they let it go. And there were some who were atheists or non-believers at the time of the height of the civil rights movement. But there were no outlets for them. There were no openly identified Black atheists, even though there are some historically, because we do educate on that. But there wasn't an organization on the ground at the time that helped provide that provided that support.
Yeah.
And so when they see us now, they're like, oh my gosh, I wish you were around when we were, when I was younger. But also that doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity for you to get involved now. As someone who I said before, I try to challenge those traditional norms. We often see people from a certain generation who don't think that they can change, or that they're maybe too old to get involved. And that isn't true. That isn't true at all. I'd like to think that I would still be an activist even in my 50s and 60s, or even older, because I'm in my 40s now. But that hopefully won't change. And so while there's a very important focus on the future generations, because hell, I have 2 boys. I have my sons, and I also have my daughter. They're coming up. They need to know how to deal with this. Whether they decide to identify as atheist or not, they have a mother who is active in this movement. And the more our profile grows, the more they may be confronted with that. And they need to, hopefully, because we're able to reach different different age groups. I think that is what makes us that makes us unique as well. So hopefully we'll continue that, because absolutely we need, we do need to pass this on, and hopefully more of the younger folks and those who aren't there will get more involved.
Yeah.
So to answer the question from David Ince, hey David.
Hi, David.
Was Free Thinking Island, and I interviewed with him and Joy, and they came to the Blackout rally. The one thing I'm happy to say is that we've connected with some folks from the West Indies, some who are atheists. They deal with similar challenges that Black folks do in the United States. We've engaged with African atheists. We've engaged even with the London Black atheists. Yeah. So there is a dynamic across the diaspora, across the world, with people of color and marginalized communities. So his question is there a way for Black non-believers to support and work with persons outside of the United States in a Black diaspora? There absolutely is. The short answer to that is yes. Yeah. We were formed, though, as a domestic nonprofit 501c3 organization. So right now we're able to establish, we're only able to establish official Black non-believer groups or chapters within the United States. However, it does not mean that we cannot support other efforts outside of the United States. Eventually, our 501c3 status can include an international base. We'll definitely need to modify that. And that's one thing this is something that I think is important to note, is that just because you start one place doesn't mean that it has to end there. Like, we started as Black non-believers of Atlanta only, but as the interest grew in starting groups in different cities, we had to increase our scope. And so there's nothing that says that we can't increase our scope internationally, because really that's where it's going. Yeah. Even if we don't establish Black non-believers in particular, we can certainly offer advice and work with the groups on how to establish groups specific to Black atheists in their areas, and also within the confines of the rules and regulations of where they are. Just because something in Canada may be different from something in the United States, the laws and rules for establishing groups in the Caribbean or the West Indies may be different than the United States. So we have to take a look at that. And with the internet, with this age of information, it's fairly easy to look up I can't say it may not necessarily be easy to understand at the time. We may need to work on that. But certainly we have those tools with each other, and helping each other in that network, help each other how to form, because we reached out to the atheist community of Austin in establishing Black non-believers and getting their bylaws and such. So there were other groups that were very helpful to us in establishing our nonprofit and eventually our 501c3 status. And so we like to be able to do the same thing for future groups. It is about, logistics. It is about that networking, and that, again, that goes back to work, because if we know how to do it here, we can certainly help other organizations start up where they are. And I'm more than happy to do that. And I know we will sometimes, if we don't know, what do? We encourage people. If we don't know, ask.
Yeah. Okay.
That goes into people who are looking for, oh, look at the baby. If there are people who don't, instead of assuming that there isn't anything out there, perhaps you should ask your local, there are a lot of local resources. You might want to check into them. And if it isn't out there, then guess what you may have to do? You may have to create it.
Yeah, build it.
Yep, you may have to build
collaboration. We definitely believe in collaboration. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go lay down.
Were there any other questions? I'm not sure if there were any other questions, but yes, absolutely. And I meant to call David this week, but it's been such a hectic week with stuff going on. Goodness gracious. But yeah, there is certainly an opportunity for us to work with and help build organizations outside the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. So there aren't any other questions yet. So I'll start with, when it comes to supporting people who do the work, there are a lot of, as we have unfortunately found out. And I actually found this I unfortunately found this out from the beginning, that just because someone identifies as an atheist, it doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily mean they're rational. It doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't racist, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, anything. And I mean that for men and women, for some of everyone. We have encountered people with different personalities, and not just personalities, but different characteristics.
Intentions.
A lot good and a lot bad. Yes, and intentions.
Yeah.
So there are some people in this movement who are in it just to see how it can benefit them, like Bree said before. And of course, at Black Nonbelievers, much like other organizations, we've encountered those individuals, those who want to join just so that they don't want support, they want an audience. But what are they actually offering for said audience? And also, how is there going to be mutual collaboration? Is there mutual respect? Do you really, really care about our mission, or do you just want to use it for your platform? And we've encountered a lot of that. And in my management capabilities, sometimes I've had to let certain folks go. Because, and I mentioned at NanoCon a couple of weeks ago that there is often a difference between, similar to offline actions and online personas, there's a difference between, public interactions and private encounters. They shouldn't be different, but unfortunately there are. And in those encounters, we've had the misfortune at times to see people who will rally for a public cause, but privately they could care less. That privately, effectively communicating with people, getting back to people on time, paying attention to details aren't important to them. And therefore, and also anything else that doesn't concern what they care about, they could care less about. But they want you to care about what is important to them. And so in that, sometimes it is a struggle, and sometimes you kind of have to dig through. You have to you have to navigate your way through those who are truly genuine and truly about it, and those who aren't. And I contend that there are a lot of good folks in this movement. There really are. If you don't like if you don't like something you're seeing, it is important to challenge it. However, it would be a good waste of resources to only focus on the negative. The one thing I've noticed is that there are white folks who are particularly online in some of these groups who will talk about, you know, the racism that's in the movement and the problems that are prevalent in the secular community, but then half the time still won't talk to Black folks. They still won't engage us to find out what the problems are and also what we're doing about it. It's almost like, well, we know that there's a problem. There are these racist white folks, but are you pointing folks to Black non-believers? Are you pointing folks to, or even are you sufficiently engaging those of us who are doing this work? And it isn't just for Black folks, it's for everyone to understand and to become a part of. So
those are the trendy allies. The trendy allies.
Yeah.
They ally because it's the hot thing to do. But what I wanted to, I did want to say regarding those who, the wolves in sheep clothing, who approach under the guise of wanting to help build. Number one, it's okay to say no. Just because someone has identified as an atheist, it is okay to say no if you're experiencing ambivalence. If you're into, I believe in that intuition. Me and Mandisa and I, we get bad feelings about certain people. It is okay because there are people whose agenda is so priority. Their agenda is such a priority. They have no problem attempting to derail, commandeer, and it is important, as we've seen lately in the atheist community, vet. We've been bamboozled. Other orgs have been bamboozled, and if someone's agenda doesn't coincide with your mission, with your goal, with your vision, they have to go. Just don't hem-haw about it, because what's going to happen if you're about community and that person is about self, there's going to be a conflict. And if you can nip that in the bud before it comes to a head, do so. Because what I've noticed is that people are not people are confrontational when it comes to mess. They're real confrontational. When it comes to handling business, this community sweeps trash under the rug, which I'm always going to have a problem with our community calling out the church. And I'm looking like, we got a hell of a lumps under our rugs too, because we have a problem with calling out, addressing. We're thinking about what the religious are going to think. You better be thinking about what your donors, your Patreon, fellow atheists in the closet, out the closet. We should be who are the first focus in mind, not what the religious are going to think about. Because time and time again, we have heard on these atheist streets, these secular streets, about some misappropriation of or unethical behaviors. And I'm not strictly speaking on the latest. I'm talking about like 2-3 years ago that only some people are aware of, but the community at large should have some basic kind of knowledge. And it's because these organizations are just as guilty as the church in either transferring, sweeping, not acknowledging, but you're definitely tout out that transparency. No, you're not transparent. So if you're stop hiring people, stop bringing people on board who, first of all, ask around. because like I said, we have experience with sheep's in wolves clothing. People have said, Mandisa, I want to do this for you. I want to do this for you. And they're all talk. So they sound good. Okay. They need to start showing, what have you done? What have you done for the community? Because that's where we had gotten hung up. The talk has not lined up with the walk. So it's okay to say no. If there's a conflict of interest, don't move forward just because they're an atheist. All atheists do not have your focus goal in mind. All atheists are not for you. Like Mandy said, not all atheists aren't rational. We have dealt with problematic atheists. There are problematic atheists who are now front line, whose problems haven't been yet revealed, that are going to be revealed. So what I'm saying is, take off these rose-colored glasses and start using laser beam focused eyeballs so that we can stop dealing with the same issues over and over and over. It takes more than just identifying as an atheist in order to be successful and have a supportive team. It takes so much more than that.
Yeah. And I would also add that there are some folks who, don't like us in this movement, as much as I like to think that, but it's important because I know, there are some things that I always have the hope that, what has happened to me wouldn't happen to anyone else. The experience. But unfortunately, that's not how people work. People tend to be very patterned. They tend to do the same things to different people. And that isn't just a religious trait. There are a lot of folks, there are a lot of atheists, and this is something I've maintained from the beginning. They let God go, but they have not let the other isms go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always been, I've always advocated for people. I've always advocated for accountability. I've always advocated for that internal support because there are people who still need it. I've always been able to gauge people by what they rally for publicly, because it does have it does give a sense to how they are. I look at how they are privately, or what they what they go through privately, because it does determine what they do publicly. And so they do go hand in hand. They aren't mutually exclusive. And it's a good skill to know how to people watch and engage. And I am happy that people have established trust in us, that they know that we're going to give them the best possible solutions and answers that we can. There are some instances that we cannot speak on things. I serve on certain boards where I cannot legally,
Right.
I am bound not to say certain things. And in some other instances, there are others who are bound by that trust. But what we do in that time is, even if we can't, we can continue to work on the groups that we know. We vet, like Bree said, we vet, but also work with the groups that we know are legitimate and who will work with us. And if there is a problem, we can bring it up. Let's see how we can resolve it. Don't just come to me and tell me that there's a problem and what you need to fix. How can you help us fix it? What can you help us do? What is your skill set? Hopefully, these volunteer opportunities can turn into paid opportunities. It takes time and it takes work. There are some people who expect instant success in this community. It doesn't happen that way. The same way it doesn't happen at any other place of employment or anything else you get involved in. There are some of us who put more forth a better effort. And so therefore, that has paid off when it comes to the visibility and people knowing who we are. Bree will tell you, as much as, as I'm one of those people who have to practice saying no, because I barely say no to anything. But that has been helpful in increasing our visibility, because even if I may seem laid back in certain arenas, there are some people who feel like because we're not out, again, standing there and demonstrating not all the time anyway, they don't think we're working. But trust me, when you get to see the ins and outs of BN, and especially when you get to see the ins and outs of what I do, you know it's work.
Ask my job. Ask my job and my work, because I represent as an atheist on my job 24/7. So just because you don't see it personally doesn't mean the work isn't being done.
Right. And it's often tedious. It is often unexciting. It's often thankless too.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's okay, because we know that it isn't just about us, and that it really is about trying to help those who need us. And I think that most everyone, whether they like us or not, they can attest to that. And that's something that I know I'm proud of, and something that we're proud of. And the fact that, Bree and I have been able to sustain, this sisterhood, this working relationship, and a relationship with others. It does set an example for what we should be doing.
Through the lawsuit and everything, we have
through defamation, through everything.
Another thing about the support, because when I got hit with that lawsuit, after I stopped laughing, when I got served, the reality was I'm really being sued on some bullshit. I won, of course, but if it wasn't for Mandy, if it wasn't for Alex Jules, for them times when I had some perilous thoughts and they talked me off that ledge, and I'm here. So that support goes, that support is not just as far as working in the community. That support extends personally. Personally, when you're second guessing yourself and you're like, you know what, why did I even bother getting involved in this? Oh, because of the people that, they helped refocus my thought and not give the plaintiff get in my head. So thanks. I thank y'all immensely. Thank you again, because that could have took me out as far as the community.
And that's also a perfect example of someone who wants to call others out on what they don't do. But when you ask them sufficiently about what they do, there's very much of a difference there. And so we always encourage people to, you can go to the source. We're always here to answer any questions.
Might not like my answer.
And we may not necessarily like the answers that we have, but we kind of do that good cop, bad cop thing. There are times where, I may give an answer in a way that, and that's the thing, that there's diversity and variety within what we do. There are different approaches. And that's okay. Yeah. And it's important for us to realize that even as Black atheists and Black atheist women, we do things differently, but we are still on the same page.
Yes.
So, and that's okay. Bree and I don't agree on everything.
Nope.
We really don't.
Nope. I'm just going to be quiet. I ain't going to say nothing. I'm just going to be quiet. I ain't saying nothing.
Right. And Bree knows when I have that, when my spidey senses tingle, it's like,
here it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. And I'm happy that we're able to share that with everyone, because that resource is important. Yeah. So we have 2 minutes, and I know that we're going to be getting ready to the panel. So yeah.
Your makeup.
Thank you.
Your eyes is popping, girl.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you very much for hosting me, giving the opportunity for me and Bree to speak today. Anytime. And I know I will see y'all at 12 o'clock Central Time. Yes. And you'll be on later too, right, Bree?
Yep, 4 o'clock with my sister, Greta Christina.
All right. Yes. Everybody who wants to keep watching this, if you're on the Orbit already, just go up to that banner ad up at the top of the orbit.net. For OrbitCon, click on that. That'll take you right to the schedule, and you can watch the next session. Thank you so much.
Bye.